Hello everyone, my name is Viviana Pramazzi and the module I'm introducing to you today is developing intercultural communication capabilities. In this 1 hour, we will try to understand what are the skills that we need to develop our intercultural communication and improve our intercultural communication to transform it in an effective intercultural communication. I'm an expert of the Institute of Education and I also have my company, Global Mindset Development Malta. What is intercultural communication about? I like to say that intercultural communication is the need to have like 2 ears, 2 eyes, and 1 mouth. So to really understand, really listen, really watching what is going on before say anything, before speaking, and especially before judging what we are watching and what we are listening. In intercultural communication, it's also too important to ask questions, but ask the right questions and also understand when it's time to ask questions and when it's better not to ask because maybe that topic is too sensitive. Maybe it's not the right moment, it's not the right time. Now, in your class, you have people coming from all over the world. You have pupils from all over the world, but also you can have pupils that they have gone through much really difficult situation, issues, war, and so maybe there's something that is better not to ask or better postpone asking to when will be a better time for them to be able to reply and explain to you why they're acting in a certain way, why they are behaving in a certain way. I would like to start with you, so now you can actually pause the video and write down on a paper between 5 to 10 of your identities. You can start writing on the paper, I am, and then you can complete this sentence adding some of your identities. I'm a wife, I'm a teacher, I'm a father, I'm a brother, I'm a football player. What are your identities? Can you write down 5 or 10 identities? So pause the video and write down your identities. And when you have written down 5 to 10 identities, think about of introducing yourself to someone else using only one. So you write down between 5 and 10, and then you pick one to introduce yourself to someone else, this like imaginary someone else, with only one. Then, when you start again watching this video, think about how do you feel? Was it easy to write down 5 to 10 of your identities? And was it easy to choose one and to introduce yourself using only that identity? Was it okay? Was it enough? Or it wasn't? There was something missing. You are something else. You are much complex. You are much more than just that identity that you choose. Even if you wrote down that identity, and even if you choose that identity to introduce yourself to the others. Because this is what we want to be aware when we have to do with cultures, when we have to do with individuals, when we have to do with students, with our kids. That sometimes to reduce them to only one identity can be risky, can be dangerous, can be complicated. because actually we are much, much more than just one identity. And we have actually a diversity of identities. Yeah, we can consider the national identity as one of the dimensions. So we are Maltese, we are Italians, we are from Serbia, we are from Pakistan. But then maybe we are from that specific region in Italy, in Serbia, in Malta. Maybe we are from the north, from the south, from that specific village. Maybe we are from Gozo. So there is also a regional, in some cases, even an ethnic identity, a group identity of that specific ethnic group we are part of. An organization has also its own culture. Your school probably has its own culture. You know that there are some values, some rules, some norms, and that are the culture of your school. Being a private school or a public school, but there is a culture in your organization. Or you can think about the army. The army, they have a strong culture. And you know if you join the army, you will join that culture. Gender is also something that is part of our identity. Generations. Nowadays, in the workplace, we have 4 different generations, and they are different. There are differences in the way they behave, in the way they work. And we can also say that this is part of their identity and their culture, and that there are different generational cultures in the same workplace nowadays. Maybe it's also in your school. Maybe there are older teacher and younger teacher. And maybe it's easy to get along, but maybe sometimes it's complicated. Maybe there are misunderstandings. Maybe there is difficulties in communication. Religion is also extremely important for many people and for many individuals around the world. It's part of their identity, and religion is linked with culture and traditions sometimes. So it's also part of an identity of an individual. And there are countries, there are people that they are also strong political identification, and also being part of that political group, political movement is also part of their identity. And there is also much, much more. There is also differences, a diversity if you are coming from a rural area or a urban area, or there is what is called also the diversity of thinking, that is based on the individual and the experiences that the individual have gone through. So this is actually what you are facing nowadays in a class, and what we are facing nowadays in society is intersectionality of cultures and a diversity of identities that we don't want to risk to reduce to only one, because can be risky, can be not enough, can be not telling all the truth to that regarding about that person, about that student, about that kid. Because what's the point with culture? Even when you think we are aware, interculturalists consider culture like an iceberg. There is a part that it's easy to see. There are things that we know, and we know. Language, we know that there are differences in language. We know that there are differences in food. Maybe there are different festivals, different feasts, different celebrations. This is what it's easy to see. But then there is much, much more that is difficult to see. And there, if we are not aware, we can find the main issues. Because there, under the surface, we can find the values, the norms, what is important for that society, for that individual. Where are the real differences? It's not about the food in itself, but maybe food in some specific culture means the family together. So that means a collectivistic society, a society where the values are linked to the family and the group, or the expectation, the different concept. And you can think about the cultural iceberg, and you can relate this to the others, but also to yourself. If you are Maltese, if you are Italian, if you are from Serbia, from Pakistan, Bulgaria, what the other people, what the others can see, and it's easy to see, so maybe they think they know your culture, but what is not easy to see, what you would like to explain to them and tell them, you know what, yeah, we like to eat in Italy and in Malta, but it's not just eating, it's the time we spend with our family. There's much, much more than just food. Or the festa. Why festas are so important in Malta? It's not only because people like to party or because they like fireworks. There is much, much more. So maybe you can pause the video now and think about a little bit you and your cultural iceberg. What it's easy for the others to see and what you would like to explain to them because they are the values of your society, of your values, or your culture's values, or the norms, why, the meanings of why you're doing certain things in a certain way. Now you will find in the folder a video. The video is The Danger of a Single Story, and is a TED Talk by a Nigerian writer, Chimamanda Adichie. And you can watch the video. The video is about 19 minutes. You can watch all the video or you can watch 10 minutes, the first 10 minutes. And you will realize the danger of a single story. What does she mean by a single story, having a single story about someone? And what is the danger? What are the risks of having a single story? And then I would like you to think about, and you can find also the questions in the folder, to think about you and your single story. Have you ever had any single story about someone and then maybe you change your mind? Or maybe someone had a single story about you, your culture, your country, your group, and then something happened and they changed their mind. Or nothing happened, but how did you feel? How was that for you? What's important in the single story is, as Chimamanda said, the single story is not untrue, but it's just one part of the story. It's not telling everything about that individual, that group, that culture. And one big example of a single story is the use that we actually make of the word Africa. Sometimes we think that Africa is just one country. She also mentioned something about that. But actually it's not. And there are so many countries in Africa, and each country is different, and each country has many also different ethnic groups and religion, maybe living in the same country, that Africa is the single story that too many times we have. And the danger of a single story is consider a continent like a small country, like they're all the same, without considering also the history of the country and everything that is going on there nowadays. So you can pause the video now. Maybe you already paused the video. You have watched the TED Talk, and you think about your single story or any episode in your life that you can link to this idea of the single story. Because what are the risks of reducing ourselves and the others to just one identity, Or what are the risks of having just one single story? Then we can easily go from observation to evaluation and from judgment to discrimination. Based on the assumptions, based on the single story that we have, we can judge the others, missing so many important information and so leading us to error in perception and so in our emotions and in our actions. This is why it's extremely important nowadays to speak about intercultural communication and be aware of the challenges of dealing with a multicultural class, with a multicultural students, with a multicultural society. The more we are aware, the more we are aware of the complexity, of the diversity, the better we will be able to deal with it in a proper way and for a successful of our communication, of our actions. So finally, we are here speaking about intercultural communication. So as you will see, the first part was a self-reflection, extremely important when you speak about cultures, because we need to start from ourselves. We need to start from a self-reflection. We are experiencing this, or we have experienced something that is actually the same our students are going through, or the more we can empathize with them, the more we can understand what is really going on, the more we will be able to deal with them and with their parents and to have an effective intercultural communication. So now, in this second part of the module, we will try to identify what are the elements to have an effective intercultural communication. And I call this model the 4A because in intercultural communication, you have to be aware, you have to assess what is going on, you have to practice the active listening, and then you have to adjust your communication, your actions, and your behavior. So be aware, assess, practice the active listening, and adjust. Let's start with be aware. There are challenges in intercultural communication, and these challenges are related to different areas. In this short module, we don't have time actually to consider all the different areas. I just want to discuss with you 3 of them that can be important in your work. In the different cultures, we don't build relationships in the same way. We don't build trust in the same ways. Because there are cultures that build trust building relationships. Trust is relationships based. You can think about Malta, you can think about many Southern Mediterranean countries, you can think about the Arab countries. You need to sit down, you need to have a coffee with someone, you have to have lunch, have dinner. There is this idea that the more we get to know each other, the more we generate trust, and so the better we can work together. So trust is relationship based. It's totally different in other countries, in Anglo-Saxon, in the US, where trust is task based. You are good in that task, you had a task, you complete the job, you complete the task, so you are trustworthy based on the task that you completed. This can be extremely important when you have to do with kids and especially with their parents. Because maybe you are starting from a culture when you want to build a relationship with them based on trust, but they actually trust you because you are a good teacher, because you are good in what you do. So it's a different perspective. Leadership is also another interesting area for you as a teacher because you can find cultures that they need a power distance. They need a distance between you as a teacher and the students and the parents. They trust the expert, they want you to be the expert. Their idea, where they are coming from, is a system that is teacher centered. The teacher has the knowledge, and we as a parents, we don't want to be part of the education of our kids, not because we don't care, but because we care and we recognize that the teacher is the best person to take care of the education of our kids, not us, based on the country and the culture where they are coming from. On the other side, and you can think about the Chinese, but also some Eastern European countries, they want the process to be teacher-centered. So it's not that they don't care about their children, but they trust the teacher. They know that the teacher is the expert, and they are coming from a system that was teacher-centered. On the other side, we have the Scandinavian countries, and also our model in nowadays that is more student-centered. We want parents and teachers together be part of the education of our children, and the teacher and the parents, they are equal, they are working together, they can work together and they can learn from each other. It's a totally different approach, but it's there. You can probably think about any episode, and maybe you can find yourself, you can recognize yourself. Oh yeah, I met that Serbian parents, and yeah, actually they were really respectful. They were totally recognize my role as a teacher, at the point that they didn't want to have nothing to do with the discussing the learning outcomes or what their child could need, because they trust the teacher. But maybe you had also that Danish parent that was challenging you because they want you to adopt a different education style or a different pedagogy. So they're totally two different approach, but they are there, and they are there nowadays, and maybe they're also in your classroom. The last one that we will then develop a little bit more in depth in this module is communication. And communication can be low context or high context. Low context is a communication that is more direct. You can think about the United States. If a person from the United States, they make a joke, then they say it's a joke. Oh, it was a joke. And you think if you are from a high context culture, like a Mediterranean culture, you're like, yeah, I knew it was a joke. It was clear to me that it was a joke. But the Americans, they are a low context culture. So the message is direct, it's clear, they explain everything. There's no any subtitles. There's nothing that you have to try to understand. You don't have to read the hair, as they say in other countries. You don't have to read through the lines. Everything is there. Everything is also maybe written. In the US, when they start a presentation, there is the agenda, so they tell you, I will explain ABC, then they explain ABC, and then at the end there is a recap. So during this presentation, you have learned ABC. If you also consider my presentation, I'm from a high context culture, and so I didn't put an agenda at the beginning. I just started with the module. I want to give you the content because in the high context culture, there are many things that you think you don't have to explain. And this can be risky if you have in a multicultural class, in a multicultural setting. So low contest is more direct, everything is explained. High contest, you have to read through the lines, there is more body language, less use of written communication. Maybe you can stop the video and think about if you ever experienced something related to trust, leadership, and communication with the parents, with the kids. Is there anything that you can think about that, yes, was actually maybe was a misunderstanding in communication? Maybe was because they have a different idea of power and leadership. Maybe they didn't want to spend time with me because for them trust is based on task and on the job. And for them, I was already good in what I was doing. This is what I just mentioned. There are studies that try to put the different countries on a continuum between low contest and high contest. But if we want to understand even better the idea of high contest and low contest, you can consider a couple, they just start dating and they are extremely low contest. They need to explain everything because anything can lead to a misunderstanding. Why I'm reading the book while you are sitting on the sofa is not that I don't love you, so maybe I need to explain to you, I need to read this right now because my boss just asked me to do something related to this book. But if you are a couple, a married couple with over like 10 years of life together, maybe there's no need to explain why you are reading that book right now and I'm sitting on the sofa watching the television, because we know that we love each other. Love is already there. There are a lot of something that we cannot say because there's no need to explain, because we are now a high contest culture. So there's no need to explain everything. But you can also think about some organization, even your school. Maybe if you are teaching in the same school for more than 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, there's no need to explain everything that you are doing to your colleagues. You all know what is going on. But if you have a new colleague that just joined the school, you have to explain to him or her everything, why you're doing this, why we have lunch here and when. And there is this need to explain. Advertisements, they are extremely useful to explain high contest and low contest culture. And this is an exercise that you can again pause the video and think about it, but can also maybe can be easy, maybe can be not so easy. But here you have two ads. One is low contest, the other is high contest. You can pause the video and try to think about what is low and what is high contest and why. Or we can try to analyze this together. And we have in the image on the left, everything is extremely detailed. You know what you are watching. You are reading what you are watching. In the right picture, there is nothing actually. It's just an image of a kid sleeping. And the ad is a pillow. But you don't know because the pillow is right in the bottom, small in the bottom. But this is high contest. If you probably are from China, you know that this is about a pillow sleeping, the comfortable of a sleeping. But the other image on the left is low contest. It's probably a picture from the US or in Scandinavian countries, or Germany, more low contest culture. So low contest, everything is explained, everything is there. There is picture, images, but there is also text. In high contest, an image that explains everything if you are part of that culture. In the folder, you will also find a couple of videos. They are the safety video of two airlines. One is American Airlines and the other is Air Malta. If you have time, if you want also to do this exercise, you can have a look at the two videos and you can think about if they are low contest or high contest and why. And if you have ever think about of the different communication. I use the safety video instruction of the airplanes because we all know what are the information there, but you will see that they are explained in different ways based on the different culture. So here you can find, to sum up a little bit, the differences between high contest and low contest: direct, simple and clear messages, low use of nonverbal communication. What it is important is that in a multicultural class, in a multicultural environment, you try to be low contest because you don't know if they have all the information. You don't know if they get your nonverbal communication. So in a multicultural classroom, in a multicultural class, you have to use direct, simple, and clear messages. Try to avoid nonverbal communication and rely on written communication. You can ask them to repeat what you just said to see if they are getting the message, but then you can also follow up with a written communication or ask them to follow up with a written communication so you can really see if they got your message. They and their parents. There are companies that they have to use, because they have a multicultural workforce, so they have to be low contest. So during a meeting, there is someone explain everything with direct, simple and clear messages, asking for feedback. There is someone else taking notes, and then after the meeting, there is always an email, a detailed email, so a written communication as a follow-up. So you cannot say, I didn't understand, or it was not clear to me. Of course, you can always say that, but to avoid misunderstandings and issues in communication. So remember, when you have a multicultural environment, be low contest, be direct, simple and clear, avoid non-verbal communication and rely on written communication. Assess. And here I'm using Malta as an example, but you can use any other maybe country or culture you have faced and try to assess what was going on or what is going on. In Malta, if you are Maltese, or if you're not Maltese but you're living in Malta, you know that in Malta people want to meet you for a coffee to discuss anything like business related, personal issues. This is because they are a high contest culture, and in high contest culture and also a collectivistic society, they prefer face-to-face communication over technology or phone call. But this can be a problem for a person coming from UK, and I had actually a case, was a video maker coming from UK, and he told me, it seems to me that I'm wasting time because everyone here in Malta, they want to meet me and they want to have coffee together. So I spend 1 hour and then I have to go from one place to the other and I waste a lot of time. But actually in Malta it's not time that you waste, it's time that you gain, because actually you are building that relationship. And if you don't realize that, if you just want to rely on phone call or in just like video call, there is something probably you will miss. That relationship will not be so strong as if you meet in person that potential client, parents, colleagues, or friend. Also, there were cases maybe you also have experienced this in Malta, where having a contract can be complicated. This is not for any legal issue, but because trust is based on relationship and so is reputation. So we don't need an agreement because we have built a relationship and we trust each other. And if you will break these rules, also your reputation will be affected. So you will probably keep that promise. You will respect that agreement based on the relationship we have built and the trust we have built. And this is again something that is extremely important in a high context culture. But you can consider then many other cultures and try to assess what is really going on using the tools of the intercultural management. Why Indians never say no is one of the biggest problems of companies that have hired Indian in Malta in the last few years. And what does no really mean in India is the actual question. Why they cannot say no? Because they want to preserve the harmony, because they don't want to be to not show respect to you, so they prefer to say yes. They prefer to agree with you, even if they don't think like you, even if they don't agree. But because there is much more going on than just saying yes or no. This is all the assessment process that you have to ask yourself, and there are tools out there in intercultural management, intercultural communication available to try to assess the situation and assess what is really going on, because it's much more that what you are saying is not just the peak of the iceberg. There is much more going on under the surface. Active listening. Active listening is the best way for you when you are in an intercultural communication, when you are speaking with someone from a different country, a different culture. The objective of the active listening is to gain information, but more important is to gain their perspective. All your attention, or your listening, or your feedback, all your responses are to gain that perspective that is different than your perspective. So this is why we are in an intercultural communication, and this is why we want to practice the active listening to get and to gain information and to gain that different perspective that we don't have, because we are starting from a different frame of reference, a different culture, different assumptions. And to be able to really understand the person we are talking with, the parents we are talking with, the colleague we are talking with, we need to gain information and we really need to understand their perspective. Always remember also to play with humor. The best way to exit a misunderstanding intercultural situation is using humor. Recognize your vulnerabilities, recognize the knowledge that you don't have, recognize your prejudice, recognize your stereotypes, but with humor. Always try to be able to play with humor. Using humor is the best way to avoid that a misunderstanding can transform itself in a conflict. And there are many ways of using humor without being offensive, especially if we start with ourselves. And here we can go back to the self-reflection process that we started at the beginning. The humor starts from ourselves, from the information that we lack, from the assumption that we have. And it's that was I was thinking. Because I was actually missing something. And you can use in humor around that. And then adjust. With the active listening, you come to a point when you realize that everyone in this discussion is right. Everyone in this communication is right, because I'm right and they're right too. But now we are at the point of reciprocal recognition and respect, because we realize that the same things have different meanings, but we started from different frames of references. We had different perspectives. We were watching the same thing, the same house, the same kid, but from two totally, sometimes opposite, different perspectives. We have learned that what we take for granted prevents us from communication. And this is what we want to avoid. This is why we want to gain information and the other's perspective, because now that we have the two or more perspective, we can look together for creative solution, or we can look together with some other expert, with our colleagues, to a new creative solution to a problem. It's not just my problem, but can be also the problem of someone else, because it's not just a problem between myself and those Italian parents or Serbian parents, but it's actually something that I have learned through this process that can also help my colleagues and maybe the schools. The big challenge is to accept to be vulnerable, to accept that your point of view is not the truth. There is also other perspectives that you have to understand to be able to adjust and have an effective communication and be able to solve misunderstandings and to avoid conflicts. Because you want to change together with the others and not against them. You want to keep this relationship with these parents working, because you want, at the end of the day, you are taking care of their kids. So you want the best for their children, and this is why you cannot oppose them, you cannot stop this communication, but you want to have an effective communication with them in the interest of the child. So just to sum up, intercultural communication at work is a process that involves everyone in your school, in your classroom. Is probably something that you are facing with your students, with the parents, that they are facing with the other students, with the other parents, with the other teachers, with you. And to be able to practice intercultural communication and improve every time intercultural communication and all this process, you have to be curious. This is one of the key. Be curious, don't be judgmental, don't pretend to have the truth, but be curious to understand their point of view, their perspective. Be aware that there is much, much more going on. It's not only a communication between a parent and a teacher, but there is much, much more. And you can be aware, you can have the tools to assess what is going on. You can also use these tools made available by the Institute for Education. You can also, there are books about intercultural management, intercultural communication, diversity and inclusion. You can have also all my contact details. If you want to contact me, please feel free. But also, the more we know, the more we are professionally and personally aware, the more we have developed our skills, the more we are able to tackle different situations. And of course, then you already are the expert. So you probably have already a lot of experience, but maybe you haven't had time so far to really think about your experience and really think how many intercultural communication, intercultural misunderstandings, intercultural encounters you have gone through, and all the lessons that you have already learned before even taking this module, that was just like pills of what intercultural communication can really be about. Recognize the value of yourself and of the others. So starting from that same, that you are at the same level, so the reciprocal recognition, and also being accountable. Being accountable means that you have to recognize when you don't have all the answers, but maybe when you need to have questions, because you need to understand, because maybe you have made a choice based on your assumption, your culture, your point of view, but there was something that was missing. So be accountable and practicing this idea of you want to change together with them for the best of the kids, and you don't want to oppose them or impose something on them, but you want to look for a creative, innovative solution that can be beneficial not only for you and them or you and the kids, but can be maybe for the benefit of all the school or your colleagues. Feel free also to share maybe with me if you want in the forum your experience, if you ever had any intercultural misunderstandings, if you already have some like lesson learned from it, and what were your challenges, and also let me know any feedback to improve also this module for the future. It was actually the first module for online for this for education, so I really hope that you enjoyed. I really hope that you also find the material useful. Feel free to get in touch, and take care and stay safe.